Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Friday Night Rambles. This is episode number 17. I can't believe we're getting so far into it. Big thank you to all the support so far. Right, we're just going to get straight into it today because we have someone who we've been wanting to get on this show for a while now. So much so, not once, but twice. Third time luck, we've managed to get him on this week. So bless him. Make your love known for the legend that is Mr. David Burton. Hello, David.
Oh, hello, Robert, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm so honoured to be here amongst all the fabulous people you've had on before. I do feel a little bit of a fake, if you like, joining such company that have appeared on here before.
Well, I don't think you're fake because you've got a career that spans over 40 plus years of doing some amazing things, which we'll talk about. But first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing really, really well, actually. I mean, like everyone else, it's really difficult time for us with these, with the coronavirus and things like that, and so little work and problems with productions being postponed and cancelled. And every day you're hearing something that has been postponed again or cancelled again. And, it's really sad for everybody. But yes, we've got to keep ploughing on, I suppose, and just do the best that we can.
Well, this is a thing, though, because as art, we are never going to die. No matter what happens, it's always going to evolve. So
Absolutely, I agree, and we're finding new ways to do things, and hopefully, we can all get back to some sort of normality very soon. I mean, first of all, I must apologise actually for missing out for 2 weeks now, actually, on your show. I mean, I so wanted to be on when Graham was on, Graham Cole, because I met him some years ago when I did an episode of the Bill, and then we were trying to get on last week, and then I had all sorts of computer problems. In fact, it was so bad that I got frustrated and I changed all the furniture around in my study, especially so that I could link up to my laptop rather than my main computer. I got so angry and frustrated, I dashed over to my old computer, trying to link up in some way. Forgotten that I changed the furniture around, sat on this stool, fell backwards over it, right into my drum kit, and knocking the snare down. Cymbals crashing everywhere,
Bless you! You couldn't make it up, right?
No,
so
I got a bruised arm, but no worries. I only suffered mild percussion. So.
Already started with the jokes already, right? So what I want to do now, I want to ask, how did you start off in the business show? This is a question that I've been asking everyone that's come on so far. So how did you start?
Yes, well, both my parents were in the business. My mother was a choreographer, dancer, ballet dancer. She was one of the original Tiller girls, actually. And my father was a variety act, comic, and was also an actor as well. He went under 2 names. He was Will Burton when he was a comic doing his variety shows, stand-up. But Ralph Burton when he was a straight actor. And he appeared not in great parts particularly, but did things like Brighton Rock. He was in that with Richard Attenborough, the original 1930 thing. Then there were things like This Happy Breed and whatever, which I think my mother also appeared in too, possibly only as an extra or supporting artist, as they're called these days. But they were both in the business, and I think that I sort of must have had something from that, if you like, because I can remember my mother telling me that when I was about 3, I used to stand on the kitchen table and make these speeches about being the king's head and whatever, making up all this sort of rubbish, which he found hugely entertaining. But and then as I got a little bit older, and we moved to this house in Reigate, and during the summer, school holidays, and I put on shows in the back garden. And invite the neighbours to take part, and the other neighbours who couldn't take part would sit on the wall around the garden watching. And I suppose that's when I first realised that I probably wanted to go into this. But prior to that, when I was very young, I must have been about 4, and I went up to, we lived in Warrington, up in Lancashire for a while, because my mother was a Lancashire girl. And my father was in pantomime, I think, somewhere up there. And it was Cinderella. And my dad was in that. And I think then that's when I first wanted to do it. But of course, after that, once I got to a stage where I was being perhaps a little bit more serious about it, or old enough to appreciate that I was serious about it, my parents both tried to talk me out of it. Because obviously, it's not the best career to have, and of course I knew all the pitfalls and everything else, and they tried, obviously, because they didn't want me to suffer all the ignominy of rejections and all that disappointment and things like that. So they did try to talk me out of it, but secretly I went into school plays and things and read the scripts behind under my blankets in bed at night and everything, never let them know that I was doing it. And but yeah, that was how it kind of started for me, if you like. So I always knew that I wanted to do that.
Yeah. So when was so you mentioned obviously Panto, your dad being in Panto. When was your first experience of watching a Panto?
Well, that was it actually. I think it was something like St Helens, and it was Cinderella. And one of the ugly sisters was very young at the time. So the Cinderella, I can't remember who played Cinderella. I know that one of the ugly sisters was Danny LaRue before he was well known. The other ugly sister was my dad. But I don't remember my dad being the ugly sister. The guy who was playing Buttons was quite a well-known crooner at the time, a chap called Dave King, who then went on to become quite a very good actor as well later. And it was he who I think impressed me most. He was one who first instilled in me the fact that that's who I want to be. I want to be that character, that actor, because there was the comedy and there was also the pathos. And the pathos really moved me. And it was really excellent. And it's very strange because I can't remember a huge amount about it, except that the song sheet at the end, would you believe, was a song called The Christmas Alphabet, and, which Dave King did. And some of it still sticks with me now, though it's never done. C is for the candles on the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
H is for the happy family.
Yeah.
And I can remember things like that, even though it was only about 3 or 4, I think, at the time. But I can't remember too much about the whole Cinderella, other than Dave King and playing Buttons. So that was a huge inspiration for me.
And I guess that sort of followed you into your career as a pantomime performer, because you've done everything from the young comedy parts all the way through now to the older comedy parts.
Yeah, I much prefer the older comedy parts. Actually, there's not quite so much responsibility involved.
So what was your first experience doing Panto yourself?
The first one was an amateur pantomime, of course, because that's what you will try to get into. I suppose. Well, my dad said, try it out first. If you're going to do this, and make it a serious thing, then do an amateur pantomime. So I did Babes in the Wood, playing one of the babes for the Merstham Amateur Dramatic Society, way back. And that worked pretty well, actually, apparently. And because from that, I got cast in a professional production the following year. Can't remember who for or where, but however, playing the babe again. And that's when my dad started to take me kind of seriously and say, look, if you really, really do want to do this, then I'll back you every step of the way. But if you muck it up, then you'll cut out of my will. But no, from there, and I did a school play, as I said. It was a very dramatic play. My English teacher persuaded me to do it, and it was a Graham Greene play called Boy with a Cart. And I played the lead role, which was Cutman, and a very religious play. And there was a wonderful scene at the end, very dramatic, where I had to come on and make this speech, where I basically had a vision of seeing Jesus. And the strange thing was, I used to get so into it that in the wings, before I got on to make this speech every night, I seemed to literally have that vision of Christ. And when I went on to do the speech, the tears would just stream down my face as I delivered it, and you could hear the whole audience, this complete hush. And I don't know, I mean, that effect for me just gave me something that, look, if I can have that effect on people. People have cried at my performances ever since, but comedy ones, of course, for the wrong reason. However, but to have that power, if you like, it seemed something very important to me. And I'd have been about 12 then, I think. And I'd not told my parents that I was in it because, as I said, they didn't want me to go into the business at all. So I kept very quiet about it. But secretly, my headmaster and my English teacher had written to my mother and father and said, we know he doesn't want you to know about this, but I think you ought to come and see it. So on the very last night, they did. I didn't even know they were in. So I did the last performance, and I sort of went back and got changed. I was walking down after the show to go back home. And as I was walking down the corridor from the stage, I saw my mother and father walking towards me and thinking, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble, disobeying them. Oh dear, what can I say? But as they came towards me, they were both in tears and just gave me a big hug. And after that, my English teacher said to them, look, we're very much a sporting school, football, rugby and cricket and things like that, all of which I was rubbish at.
You and me both.
I was very rubbish. Oh yeah, I'd love to play it, but I'm terrible. But they said to my parents, that we think it'd be better if he had an education which sort of went more towards the artistic drama side of things. So eventually my parents agreed, and I was sent from there to the Ada Foster School of Speech and Drama, or Ada Foster Theatre School in Golders Green. So I went there, and it was a complete eye-opener for me. I mean, the people were all what I wanted to be. Do you know what I mean? It was such a different environment. Whereas I've been slightly bullied at school for being not very good at football, not very good at all the sports, but always wanted to spend time in the library and, as they call it, do acting. So it was not bullied, but you were the butt of some Mickey taking and whatever. You always felt uncomfortable. But as soon as I got to Ada Foster, it was a completely different environment, and I realised that I wasn't the odd one out.
Yeah.
And there were some wonderful people there as well. So, having said that, I think I'm the one who went there who's now still working as an actor. Actually, that's not true. Actually, that's not true because Wendy Padbury was at the same school. Wendy Padbury was one of the first Doctor Who assistants, and she was trained there. Probably doesn't remember me, but I have met her since, and she's now an agent. Well, actually, so yeah. But yeah, from there, I was very fortunate in qualifying to go to the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, which is where I trained.
And looking at your CV here, you've done some very amazing stuff, like across not only stage but screen. I mean, looking at some of the shows you've been in, you mentioned you did an episode of The Bill. You've done Doctors. Some of us do Adam. Classic The Morecambe and Wise Show. Only Fools and Horses. Some of these shows are iconic parts of British TV history.
I know. I was going to say very, very small parts. It's nice that they're on their CV because my agent puts them on there. But I kind of did it back because it's a very small part. Just a cough and a spit quite often. I did Morecambe and Wise Show way back in the must have been the early 70s or something. They weren't all that popular then. They'd had a shot at doing television, I think for the BBC, and I did one show with them where I played a rather posh schoolboy in a sketch, and that was my very first experience of working with them, and I thought they were very funny then, but it didn't. The whole thing didn't work, and then later they switched to ITV, and then fortunately I was cast again in another sketch, just being an announcer at one of Ernie Wise's plays that he wrote, stood alongside this sculpture. And I mean, Eric Morgan was always funny anyway. Well, the pair of them were when you went to have a cup of tea in the canteen, and just kept you fits all the time. Anyway, when we came to record it, I just couldn't stop laughing. We had to have so many takes. I mean, Eric just messing around all the time. And I was supposed to be straight. I was supposed to be doing these announcements really straight. But every time we came to do a take, he'd do something different. And I would just corpse. And I couldn't help it. And I think in the end, we must have done about 10, 12 takes before we got it right. I mean, I did about 4 or 5 lines anyway, but kept on messing up because it was just so funny. But wonderful guys, really were.
So what sort of humour do you like? Because again, your comedy's rooted through your career. So what is the sort of thing that you find funny? I know that's a really odd question to ask, but
it's always difficult. I mean, I wait for these one-liners, and I think when I was at drama school, yes, of course, you have to do all the Shakespeares and things like that. But I always liked comedy best, and the people at the Guildhall particularly didn't especially like you doing comedy. They wanted you to be a serious actor. And I can remember one day when we had this improvisation class, and the scenario we were given was a plane, an aeroplane, with only a couple of 3 seats available, and each of you had to go up in turn and say to the drama teacher, who was like the main stewardess, who would only allow you onto this plane if you had a really good story. So all these people were going up there and melodramatically saying, "Oh, I must get home. My grandfather is dying," and all this, and all the tears, and all this huge melodramatic stuff was coming up, and then there'd be another one get up and say, "Oh, I must get back. I work over here, and my wife's having a baby. I want to get back in time for the birth of the baby." So it all went round the circle, and I was one of the last to be called up, and I went up there and I said, "I just get on that plane," and the drama teacher said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I'm the pilot." And and at that point, the whole class just collapsed into fits of laughter. And the drama teacher just said, "Burton, it's comedy for you." So that's when, and because I love the sound of laughter. I mean, I said earlier when I was doing a serious face, Captain of the car, and the tears were streaming down my face, and to have that power to make people cry was great. But I much prefer the power to make people laugh. It's a much more joyous experience. Tears of laughter I can accept,
Yeah.
but the other way, not so much. But the sort of comedy that I like is well, witty. I think, though, I don't consider myself a wit, but there are some great wits around, and I've always liked people like Barry Cryer, his wife, Bob Monkhouse, many others actually that just naturally good writers of fun stuff. And I don't like blue jokes. I still find it very difficult when I'm doing pantomime if there's something which I got to say which has the word fart in it, for instance. That's all acceptable nowadays, but I just feel uncomfortable doing a fart joke if I'm asked to. I do it because I'm employed to do the job, and I can make my comments known that I do feel uncomfortable about it, but I'll still do it. But I'm not proud of it, if you like. I don't feel happy about doing it. So I don't like racist humour, which is still going around very much. And people say, "Oh, you're a woke," or whatever they call them these days. Easily offended and all that. But no, I don't like those. I don't like jokes which take the mickey, if you like, out of other people as well. I prefer me to be the butt of the joke rather than putting it on someone else. And those very old-fashioned jokes that you hear over and over again. My wife, that sort of stuff, on the mother-in-law. It's also old hat, I think, these days. I'm old hat. I'm old hat myself.
That's it. One of the things I like about you, David, is you tend to do a joke a day and you put it on your Facebook, which I think always nice. It's always quite late towards the end of the day, and it's always a nice thing to sort of end on. And so what made you want to do that and put a joke a day on?
Well, it's because I write jokes for a lot of other comedians and some television programs, which I'm not allowed to especially mention, but they're television quiz shows where they're comedy quiz shows, where sometimes you have the guest host is not really a comedian, so you're writing lines for them. And also there's sometimes guests on there who are not comedians, so you give them a selection of things which are topical. And then quite often, other things come to mind which are not suitable for the programs until I think, well, they're not going to get used. So I'll put mine on here just to make everyone else enjoy them. Otherwise, they're going to be not wasted exactly, but not usable for the things that I was writing for. So that was it basically. And funny enough, through doing them on Facebook, I've had other contracts come through to do other television programs, or write one-liners for other comedians and whatever, but I don't mention who they are because they're the ones who like to get the credit. We're doing it, but as everyone knows, behind all comedians these days, there has to be someone who's helping them with lines and feeding them the material, because television, particularly, eats up material so very, very fast. That's always been the case for a number of years now. So, the more popular a comedian is, the more he appears on television, the more it uses up his other material. So then he's always looking for something new. So through Facebook, thankfully, and doing those jokes, I do get private messages. Can you write something with me? Can you do this? Can you do that? And everything else, which I'm always happy to do if I can. I need to know how the comedian works, what sort of material they normally do, get to know their act first of all, so that I can write something more or less tailor-made, if you like, for them. Yeah, that's about it, really.
So, in terms of going back to the Panto side, what
Yeah.
sort of roles have you played? 'Cause we've talked about the types of roles you played, but can you remember like the sort of roles, like the types of roles you played? So, what have you played?
Sorry, what haven't I played?
Well, what have you played? Let's start with what have you
Oh,
played?
right. What have I played? Oh, I've done in the young days. Of course, I did all the Survivor Jacks, the Buttons, Marbles, those sort of roles. These days, it sort of quickly became that. I sort of developed from that into Captain's Mate. When we used to have Captain Mate in Dick Whittington, so played Captain's Mate a number of times, and then it developed to being like the Alderman Fitzwarrens, Baron Hardups, my favourite role, by the way. Yeah, Baron Hardups, Alderman Fitzwarrens, as I've said, King, Emperor, those roles. And I really very much enjoy playing those character roles, which they have a bit more life. I can create a little bit more depth because I do take pantomime, despite my comedy background, I do take pantomime extremely seriously. It's a very, very serious art form. And I know it's not, Shakespeare. I know it's not, anything like that. But I always create a backstory for my character and the relationship with the other characters around it. And sometimes some people, when they first come into pantomime, they chat with me and I build up this story between us and everything. And some people laugh and think I'm just mad. But on the other hand, it helps me to have that association with those characters. And it's worked quite well for me, I think, over the years. But I can have that association with the different characters.
Well, it's one of those things, though, David, because by adding that depth, you're creating this world for the audience, and particularly the children watching, because they have to believe that this is a real, or as real as it can get. Obviously, we all know it isn't real because that's theatre. Everyone knows it. But the little kids don't know that. You know,
Absolutely. I know. And I think you, an actor, have to be convincing. You have to convince them, make even the adults, for a couple of hours, suspend their belief. So that they're really wrapped up in it. And I always, well, most usually in Cinderella, most usually in Dick Whittington, when I'm playing the father, Baron Hardup or Alderman Fitzwarren, I usually ask for a particular scene where I say to either Cinderella or Alice Fitzwarren, in a serious bit, I always like this bit of pathos and say something along the lines of, look, Alice, or look, Cinderella, I know I haven't always really been a good father to you. I want you to know that I do love you very, very much. And it's Alice Fitzwarren. I would say something like, you do remind me so much of your dear mother. So I want you to have this. Then I'll produce the gold necklace, which then I put around her neck and say it was her mother's favourite. And then you must keep it very, very safe. I tell you what, let's put it in the safe for safekeeping. And then of course the bat comes along and steals it and everything else. But I always insist that there should be that rapport, bit of pathos between father and daughter. Where yes, I play most of it's a bit of an old fool, but having that relationship, which I've spoken to usually the young actors uh, during rehearsals about my feeling of their relationship about how she's my only child because her dear mother, who I love very much, died in childbirth, and I've been so busy doing other things that I probably ignored her for a lot of the time. And I'm so sorry about that. And she's been brought up by a wet nurse or assistants and things like that, most of the years. But because I have responsibilities, either as an alderman or as a baron or whatever. And I think it's hugely important to bring that element of truth to it and be able to have an audience which were laughing, side splittingly a moment ago, just suddenly go, oh my God, that moment, and then bring it back up again, because we don't want to do crime, but you just want them to have that intake of breath and make people realise this is real. This is, it isn't just mucking around. It's not just grown-ups playing the fool on stage. This is a real story here. And I work with some wonderful, wonderful people, many who you've interviewed and know quite well. And we could talk about Whitney Bay, some
Well, I
wonderful
was going to
people
say
there.
that, David, because one of the first time I ever saw Cinderella as a panto live on stage was the first time you did Whitney Bay back in 2012.
That's right. It would have been, yes, yeah.
And you had again a stellar cast. Steve Walls, who again was one of our very first guests we had, was Buttons, and that sort of made me want to do what I do because of Steve, and partly because of what you do. Jennifer Metcalf from Hollyoaks was Cinderella that year, and she was brilliant, and Keith Jack as well. So like from personal first-hand experience of everything you saying, it's just gone, yeah. So what I would like to know is, because you've done Whitney Bay now quite a few times.
I think I've done it over the last, since 2012. I think I've done it 4 times. I don't tend to go back every year because I tend to, think people have too much of one particular theatre. So I don't want to get fed up. So I tend to go off and work for other people every other year or so, And then, but it's always a delight to come back. I mean, Whitney Bay is one of my favourites. I'm glad you mentioned that particular Cinderella, because I've done Cinderella again since there as well, at Whitney Bay. But that particular pantomime, 2012 one, it was the first time I'd met Steve, and it was really my favourite pantomime I've done there. Steve, I didn't know previously, but before we met, and he said to me, we chatted on Facebook, private messenger, and I just said to him, I got a couple of jokes here which you might like to do. This was after we got the script, but there's a couple of lines which would this be any better for or something? I won't be insulted if you. So I messaged him, and he said, right, that's great, love it. And when we got to rehearsals for the very first day, and I met him and everything, it was wonderful. And we started doing the read through, and he changed the lines, and it got a laugh. The first one got a laugh, and he just turned around in front of everyone and said, "Thank you, Mr. Burton, for that one." And then he said, "That's another one from Mr. Burton. Thank you very much indeed." So he credited me in front of everyone else with writing these jokes. I didn't expect that at all, because most comedians like to show that they're clever and witty, and they've made it all up. So I was very honoured that he did that, and very proud that he did that as well. But also, I thought, now here's a really good man, and we got on like a house on fire after that. And even though I've been in the business for a very, very long time, you're always learning. And I learned one thing from Steve, one thing that he told me to do. It was my first entrance, and we decided on different ways of doing my first entrance. And I had this favourite little routine with Jennifer Metcalf about not recognising her as my daughter and all that sort of thing. And Steve just said to me, "Look, you look funny. Look funny. You don't have to say anything to start off with. Come on, I'll get you on, and you just stand there. Don't say anything. You'll get laughs." And it takes a lot of courage for an actor like me to just stand still on stage, just looking down at the audience and not saying a word. Because first entries, you're always a little bit on edge, but he taught me that, and now I have the courage to do it. And but as I say, you're always learning something from somebody else, and so now, yeah. I mean, he was right. He was right as well. We always got a huge laugh out of me not saying a word, and even one of the reviews mentioned it, saying he just gets laughed by, not saying a word, just walking on stage. In one of the reviews. So I was very proud, and thank you, Steve Walls, for giving me that advice as well. That's what a good comic can always do.
And I think that's the brilliant thing about Steve. And I guess there are other comics that you've probably worked with in the past that will be similar. But I think the thing with Steve is no matter who you are, whether you're an audience member, a cast member, someone that works in the show, or just someone that passes him, I've never heard a bad word about Steve.
No, he's just a wonderful guy. And also, I mean, he's fun to work with on stage. I mean, during that particular syndrome as well, we'd come out of the dressing room and he'd say to me, because we'd have come on from opposite sides of the wings to come on stage and do a bit of dialogue a gag between the two of us. And he would say to me sometimes, something like, "Hey, David, do you know the Gatto gag?" And I'd say, "Oh, vaguely." Well, let's do that one. And then we just walk off from different sides of the stage. Each started off. I'd just be feeding from what I could remember. No idea completely what I was doing. But, you would feed, buttons and everything else. Oh, it's not Gatto. It's not Gatto, it's Gatto. And he would come in with a punchline. And even though I knew the gag, he would always corpse me at that point because he was doing it with this Geordie accent as well, which always sort of made it better for me. So he would throw these things at me, it just kept it fresh all the time, and loved every minute of it. Actually, really did. It was my favourite Cinderella in recent years, certainly.
Is there any other standout memories you've got of doing Panto? Because again, you would have done that many different Pantos, not only at Christmas but at Easter as well.
Yes, yeah. I think it's 42 Christmas ones, seasonal ones, and 8 out of season ones. So Easter and summer ones and things like that. So 50 pantomimes, I suppose, in all, which makes me kind of like an old veteran. I hate the word veteran, but anyway.
You can be a stalwart if you want, a stalwart of theatre.
Sorry?
You could be a stalwart, yeah.
Oh, yes, well, it just makes you feel very old. Mind you, they say these days 50 is the new 30. Mind you, still gets you a big hefty fine and 3 points on your license. So
that is true. I'll give you that one. So one that I didn't realize did Panto, and when you see like people post like pictures on Facebook or whatever, going, "Oh, I can't believe this was so many years ago." Ross King, the Hollywood presenter, the Hollywood reporter.
Oh yeah, Ross. Yeah, that's Ross King. Yeah. Yes, I did. That was Dick Whittington at the Harlequin Theatre in Red Hill. With let me think now, Stephen Yardley from Howard's Way, Jan Francis from Howard's Way, Colleen Nolan of the Nolan Sisters. She was Alice Fitzwarren. Stephen Yardley was ship's captain, obviously because of the connection with Howard's Way, and I was captain's mate. And Ruskin was Idlejack. Yeah, very good as well, actually. Enjoyed working with him.
Because again, obviously, with the career he's gone on to being a Hollywood person, you don't realise that. Another thing I want to ask, how do you think pantomime's changed since you started doing it to where it is now?
Oh, I think it's got to change anyway, or should change anyway. It's always fairly organic. There are some things I don't like, and some people will disagree with me, I know, but I have been in some productions where you had maybe somebody who's quite well known, though I've never heard of them, from a a reality television show or something like that. And I know the producers believe that it helps put bums on seats, but honestly, they're not very good a lot of the time. There are exceptions. I'm not saying all of them, but there are one or two that I have worked with. I really just think you're just walking through this. You're just really doing this for the money. And it means the rest of us, because half the time they can't even turn up on time, not just for rehearsals, but for the actual performance. They're not worried about, well, I'm not, there's one show where we had quite a well-known sort of personality. And he would quite often arrive 15, 20 minutes after the curtain up. He'd send a message saying, "Oh, I'm trapped in traffic," and things like that. And they don't realise the problems that causes for everyone else. You've got a boy dancer, getting ready into the costume and everything else, ready to go on, not sure quite what he was doing and everything, but ready to go on. And then he turns up, the star, as it were, turns up. So, well, what's all the fuss about? I'm not even on for the first 35 minutes, But they don't realise what problems knock-on effect that has. And if it happened once, you could excuse it. But when it happens 4, 5, 6 times during a run, then it begins to irritate. And I've known people sort of say, "Well, I can't rehearse tonight, or I can't go past 6 o'clock tonight rehearsing because I'm playing football." You think, no, hang on a second, that's not a good idea to go and play off in a football match. You might get a broken leg or something, injured playing a fun game of football. Fine, if you want to keep fit, do it. Yeah, go to the gym or whatever, but don't go and play a football match or something like that when you're contracted to be in this particular show. I'm not going to go off with your mates just to play. I mean, not professional football. I'm just talking about just to kick them out because that's what we normally do on a Tuesday night or something. And that sort of annoys me. The attitude, really. But that, aside from all that, there have been changes. One of the first changes, I think, was instead of having a girl playing principal boy, we started to have boys playing the prince and those sort of roles, which some purists don't like. But I'm not that bothered. I think it works better in some cases. I remember the first time I actually kind of encountered it was in a production of Aladdin, where we had the Aladdin was being played by a young lad, Matt Hodgson, his name was, who was the drummer in Buddy, that was on the West End. And the producers said, look, if we're going to have a male principal boy, then we're going to have a female Abanazar to balance it out. So they had the wonderful Carol Cleveland from Monty Python's Flying Circus, the only blonde in Monty Python. So she played Abanazar. I was the emperor. And yes, it really did work, actually. She hated children anyway, so.
That's quite
in real life.
It's quite interesting in the sense that the first time I've seen was actually recently. I saw a production of Aladdin that had a female Abanazar, and but it was a slightly different name, but it worked, but at the same time it didn't. But then again, it was the way that I won't go into specifics, but that production did have the traditional principal boy, but it also had 2 dames, which got me really confused. But I think it's nice that tradition of such is upheld. My sort of next question would be, where do you think pantomime's going?
Yes. Well, hopefully it's going to carry on. There are still some productions going out this year. only a handful at the moment, I'm afraid. Yeah, I hope it will continue. I hope it will continue to progress. I think it's a very important and particular art form. A lot of people do it down. Well, a lot of people in the acting profession do it down in many ways. I get a lot of so-called legitimate actors say to me, "Oh dear boy, doing pantomime again, such a low form of comedy and everything else." But I suppose it must be a lot of fun, you know. And everything. Actually, as an actor, it's probably the hardest work you'll ever do, because people just don't realise. I mean, it looks like fun. It's meant to look like fun. If we can make it look like fun, if we can make it look that it's all just happening now and everything, then that's great. But you don't know how much hard work has gone into that, the producers start planning the productions about a year before, well, obviously a year before, getting everything into place. As actors, we're very lucky, we get 10 days rehearsal. We might get the script. We might get the script on the first day of rehearsal sometimes, Quite often in the past, I've been given the script on the first day of rehearsals on the Monday, and we've only got 5 days rehearsal. So 5 days to get it all in place. All the sketches, all the gags, all the scripts, all the choreography, all the songs, and then you open on the Saturday. It can be very, very intense doing that, and possibly doesn't always make for the best opening couple of nights. So sometimes people like Whitley Bailey, the lovely Gary Telfer, and Blue Genie Productions, they kind of insist on like 10 days rehearsals now. But even then, it's still 5 days for the actors to get everything ready. And then after that, you're more or less straight into technical stuff, the technical side of things. So you become secondary after that. It's about the technical boys and everything else. And then we get down to, in Whitley Bay, about 4 dress rehearsals before we actually open, which is always good. And that means that when you actually open, you're pretty much on top of it all, apart from a few sort of nerves and maybe the occasional sort of technical problem that happens, But even then, I mean, usually if you can add them way around them, that's fine, I had to do that so many times.
Have you got any standout memories of doing that? Any sort of funny mishaps that have happened?
I'm trying to think, actually. There's been so many, really. Most recently, I say most recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was doing Sleeping Beauty, and the guy who was playing the prince was, you might know actually, or might have heard him, a chap called Jeff Brazier.
Jeff Brazier, yes.
Yeah, that's right. He was playing the prince, and my daughter was Aurora. That's right. My daughter was Aurora. I was playing King Crumble. And anyhow, basically, it was a lovely sort of scene where the prince comes on, and it's a drop scene, projector screen came down behind him. And this is at the Thameside Theatre in Grays. Now, if anyone has ever worked there, there's on the right-hand side, stage right, that is, of wings, there is no space at all, absolutely no space, very, very tight. Anyway, the screen comes in, and Jeff Brazier had to sing this, I think it was Michael Bublé song, Haven't Met You Yet.
Yeah.
Haven't Met You Yet. And they had this lovely idea. The stage manager would have a video camera, which he would poke out through a hole, and he would pick up members of the audience, females in the audience, and their faces would come up on the screen behind him as he's singing this song, going through the lines, which was great because people in the audience absolutely loved it, the families loved it. And at the end, there was this shot of Aurora in the wings, just her face came up on the screen in this big heart. So he finished the song, and as he goes off, then the screen starts to roll up, and there was myself and the Dame supposed to come on and have this bit of dialogue. He's saying, "Oh, I'm worried about Laura," and then Dame say, "Oh, I'm so worried. I haven't seen her for ages, and where can she be?" Anyway, as the screen rolled up, it caught in the bottom of Princess Aurora's frock, and as it rolled up, the lovely Natalie Walters, if you're listening, Natalie, I'm sorry to embarrass you, but as it rolled up, all the audience can see that the mechanism was doing this, showing off both her very fine shaped legs and nice buttocks as well before the machine jammed. And so I beckoned to the Dame, the boy's name, let's go around the front, let's go to the front and do the next bit. So we had to go on, and it was just really question about living because the audience could see all what was going on. Technician trying to unjam the mechanism, and him saying to me, "Oh, I'm worried about the wall. Where can she be?" And I'm saying, "It's not about 30 feet up there by now, I should think." And, I thought you were supposed to be doing Peter Pan next year. we just kept going, really, just making jokes about it. And of course, the audience were in fits of laughter because they could see what's going on. But you've got to include them, and that was it, basically. But yeah, I had another experience actually where this was going back some years ago, when I was playing Baron Hard up in Cinderella. I think it was in Melton Mowbray. And there was a scene where I spoke to Cinderella was on stage, and I was supposed to come on, we were supposed to have a little chat. And then suddenly part of the scene started falling forward, the flats at the side, having this domino effect. It was okay, I was stuck there. But Cinderella just ran off. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I've got to get on and do something because I know the Ugly Sisters are still changing. So I've got to give them time to finish their change. So I just went on, and someone said, "Oh dear, oh hard up all. It's all falling apart. What am I to do? I've got no money to repair it. I've had to sell everything. I've even sold the Hoover, but it was only gathering dust." That's what I said at the time.
Love that.
And anyway, just kind of added buttons, come out here. Give me a hand with this repair it. I'm just rumbling and stage technician, she's just pushing the flats back. So we're going to do okay. And then carried on with the show. So that was it. The strange thing is that I think about 4 years ago now, Tim Vine, the comedian, won the best joke at the Edinburgh Fringe, or it's actually the best joke at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, for saying I had to get rid of the Hoover when it was in gathering dust. And I thought, hang on, that was an idea I did years ago. So I put it on Facebook. I was very, very gratified that Tim. But I thought no one would believe me. And then people from the show, that Cinderella, wrote back to me and said, "Yes, I remember it very well. One of the best ideas ever going," and everything else. So I felt really gratified, and and proved that I had actually said it, first. So there you go. But yeah, I mean, there were so many things that go wrong because it's live theatre, but I love it because of that. I must admit, like anyone else, I've forgotten lines at times when there's been a rush. I've done shows where I've been put in at the very, very last minute, and that's horrendous, absolutely horrendous, like the day before, and then gone on, started off okay, and then thought, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be saying next. But others around you always help you out. So that's, if you're working with good pros, anyway.
My final question, because we're going to have to wrap it up in a minute.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry, I waffled on far too much.
You know what? Just hanging on to every word that you've said, I'm in awe. My next sort of question is, the reason why we're doing this, we're talking about supporting local theatre. Why do you think local theatre is important? Because again, especially in recent years, you've been in some very different parts of the country. Obviously, you've been up here in Whitney Bay quite a few times. You mentioned Grays. You've mentioned Melton Mowbray.
Well, all over the country. Yeah, I love it. Regional theatre. Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you look at it, I suppose. But really, regional theatre. Without regional theatre, there would literally be no artists in the West End, if you think about it. It's the feeder for that, and also it works the other way around for actors. West End producers will do their West End production, and then company will put it out on tour. So that goes out to all the regional theatres, and provides a huge amount of work for actors in that way. But also, regional theatres are for the very much part of the local community. And not to repeat what a lot of other people have said before, but I get, and I'm sure other actors do as well, get a lot of young actors just starting out asking me what's the way to get into television and film, how can I do that? And I always say, don't even think about getting into television and film, find out if you want to be an actor. But oh no, I just want to be on telly. And I would say, look, first thing you should do, join your local amateur dramatic society, go on stage. If you might not want being on stage, you might find it terrifying. Get involved, find out what all the ins and outs of it are. And without regional theatre, there'll be no outlet for that. Regional theatre really is a training ground for many, many people. And that's why it's extremely important that it exists, giving people an outlet to all their aspirations in that way, from children right the way up to adults. And if you think about people like Buster Merrifield from Only Fools and Horses, who started out in his local theatre and managed to get his equity card through actually becoming part of Worthing stage management team, I think, at one point. Mind you, he was a bit angry because the first audition he went for was Only Fools and Horses and got it. Whereas just have been around for 30, 40 years trying to audition for the same part. And he'd been a bank manager, retired on the nice handsome son. God bless you, Buster. I got his bottle of biography signed by him, by the way, as well. So. But yeah. I mean, regional theatre. We've got to find something to support it. Trouble is with all these things. I don't want to get too political, but the arts, I'm afraid, always seems to come way, way down the ladder when it comes to grants and things like that. You've got to support the arts. I mean, Winston Churchill had that thing about if we haven't got the arts, what are we fighting for?
Exactly.
So you've got to have that. We need the culture in this country, and we are the best in the world, and the most appreciated in the world. Our actors, our shows, our productions, are admired all over the world by everyone. I mean, America, which is a great place, or the second greatest nation, if you like, for the arts, in many ways, still bows down to us as being the throne of it all, if you like. And live theatre is best. If anyone wants to go on to television, if anyone wants to go into film, then do theatre first, because that's when you get the real training. It's easy to do television and film once you've had the experience of theatre. If you're just into television and film, or in a soap, I've said this before, people in soap operas or something like that, then come back to do theatre. And they don't know how to project, they don't know how to work on the stage, they have no stage presence. So it's a different technique. But if you learn theatre, you can so easily switch to television. You don't have
Yeah.
to speak as loudly and all that sort of thing. So anyway, I've used up most of the time.
What do you know? What
and
you
it has
heard
not
here
been so
first.
boring. I'm so boring. I'm so sorry.
You are not. Honestly, do you know what, David? It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Finally, we got you on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I just want to, David, don't go anywhere just yet. I just want to say we've got a massive announcement coming within the next week on something that I think is going to be absolutely amazing. So stay tuned for that, because I'm so excited for what we've got coming up. We've got 3 episodes left. Before we finish, just before we're going to finish the beginning of October. Next week's really exciting. I think you're going to like next week, because we're going to be doing something different with next week. We're going to be doing something related to families. That's your clue. We've also got a big announcement coming up as well. But meanwhile, a big thank you to David for being here today. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week. Well, David, we won't see you next week unless you want to come back. You can come back anytime you want.
Oh, bless you, Bob. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your patience on both counts tonight, as well as the previous two nights. Thank you so much indeed. Very enjoyable.
Have a good week, everyone. See you later.
And, yeah, take care.